Good evening and welcome to our public meeting this Tuesday, April 2nd, 2024. Can I get a mover and a seconder to open the meeting? Moved by Councillor Bucci, second by Councillor Jaworski, that we open the meeting at the call of the chair at 6:30. All those in favor? Carried. Approval of agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda?
No, Mr. Mayor, thank you.
All right, can I get a mover and a seconder for the approval of agenda? Moved by Councillor McDonnell, seconded by Deputy Mayor Lang, that we approve the agenda as presented. All those in favor? Carried. Declaration of pecuniary interest. Are there any? Seeing none, we'll get into new business. Zoning bylaw 02-2024, 20383 County Road 2. Ms. Haley.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Joanne Haley. Before we get started, we have two zoning amendment applications to hear this evening. So I'm going to read required wording under the Ontario Planning Act that will apply to both applications. Any person may attend this public meeting and or make written or verbal representation, either in support of or in opposition to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Council of the Township of South Glengarry before the bylaw is decided upon, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of the Council to the Ontario Land Tribunal, also known as OLT. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Council of the Township of South Glengarry before the bylaw is decided upon, the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the OLT unless there are reasonable grounds to do so. The first application that's before us this evening is known as the Wash Lancaster Inc. This property is located at part of Lot 38, Concession 1, being Part 1 on Reference Plan 14R 2964, located in the geographic township of Lancaster, now in South Glengarry, and it's addressed as 20383 County Road 2 in South Lancaster. This is an aerial image of where the property is located. You can see that it's located on the south side of the 401, being the lines in red, on the east side of County Road 2. The purpose of this amendment this evening is to rezone the subject property from highway commercial to highway commercial exception 11 to permit a laundromat as a use on the subject property, and to also permit the proposed laundromat and a car wash to be serviced by 3 parking spaces on the subject property. All other applicable provisions of our zoning bylaw 3809 as amended will continue to apply if this is approved. So a car wash is a motor vehicle washing establishment, is already a permitted use in the highway commercial zone. So I want it to be clear this evening that we're not talking about adding this use. We are talking about adding a use of a laundromat and reducing the required parking to 3 parking spaces. And I'll explain that a little bit further. As part of the existing structure and that structure is very familiar to everybody as Old Kirktown and most recently as Marigold Market. A portion of it is proposed to be removed, and the remaining portion would accommodate the proposed laundromat. And then a car wash proposed building to accommodate the car wash will be built on the same lot. I'll show a site plan and amendment. The proposed development will be subject to site plan control prior to building permits being issued if the zoning amendment is approved. The subject property is approximately 0.46 acres in area, and it is serviced by both municipal water and wastewater services, and it will continue to be serviced. The subject property is currently designated commercial district in the county official plan, and a staff report summarizing the consistency with the official plan and the PPS will be brought to council in the near future. I now have a series of images to show you. I realize this one's very difficult to see, but this is proof that the property was surveyed in advance of designs being completed. So we'll get a little bit more zoomed in on the survey. I know this is difficult to see, but in the middle of this plan shows an outline of the existing structure. You might be able to see somewhat in the middle of the screen where it says Part 1. That is the frame of the existing building that's L-shaped. And then this is now what's proposed. So I'll explain this a little bit more in detail. You'll see that the building is no longer proposed to be L-shaped. It'll be a rectangular shape. So basically, the front portion of that building is proposed to be removed. This rectangular shape would be the location of the proposed laundromat. You will then see 3 parking spaces, one that has an accessible sign on one space. To the south of that is now more of a square-looking building, and that would be the drive-through car wash. You'll see an aisle that when you drive through into the car wash, basically that shows the requirement for stacking. According to our bylaw, we have to be able to stack a minimum of 10 vehicles, and I believe this shows 11 vehicles within that stacking lane. Directly to the to the west of where that proposed building is, you're going to see 6 parking spaces. These parking spaces are shown on this site plan. However, these parking spaces are not factored into the equation because they're not located entirely on the land owned by the property owner. You'll see the dashed line traverses those parking spaces, and that represents the front property line being the west property line. Doesn't mean to say they can't park there. The county is well aware of this space being there. It just means it's something that we don't factor in the equation. That's why we count the 3 parking spaces only. So again, this is a little bit more of a zoomed in version that demonstrates how the vehicles would pull into the subject property, would be able to stack and drive through the car wash and come out and exit accordingly. We now have a few images to show you. Again, I know a lot of people are very familiar with this property. You can see where these front steps are. Those are where the existing parking spaces are. And then directly in front of that, adjacent to the road, you're going to see a curb and basically a curb and gutter. There's no defined lines for parking there now, but if that store is busy, you'll often see cars pulled up there and stop and parked there. And as I mentioned, it was never prevented to be parked on previously. So this is more of a zoomed in image where it doesn't show the current line spaces, but again, parking can occur. And this is just the required sign that we're supposed to have on site for all zoning amendment applications. And again, this would demonstrate the parking spaces directly located in front of the structure. And just a reminder that a portion of this structure will be removed, and that'll be a rectangular shaped building that will be running east-west. There's just another image there as well. And then this would basically be the backyard, which is going to show how you're going to be able to pull in, turn around, and head west again to drive through the proposed car wash building. Lots of photos here for everyone. So as part of our process, we're required to notify all abutting property owners within 120 meters. In this particular location, we also have to notify the United Counties of SDNG because the property fronts on County Road 2. We're also obligated to notify the Ministry of Transportation for a few reasons. One, any development that's proposed within 800 meters, we have discussions with them. Any development that's proposed within 395 meters requires a permit. And MTO owns land directly across the road from this site as well, so it falls within the 120 meter as a landowner. And that's simply because of the exit of the 401 heading south. We also circulated to abutting property owners within 120 meters. To date, I've received written comments and I've spoke with one property owner. So one property owner requested clarification on what is proposed to be built on the lot. And a second requested a list of existing permitted uses and those uses in the highway commercial zone to compare to the new permitted uses in the highway commercial exception 11. The only new use that's being proposed is a laundromat. The reason for that is laundromats are typically uses that are found not on main streets or not on areas that have high traffic. They tend to be more on a side street in a village, more in a residential area. Doesn't mean to say it can't be located here, but that's the reason why it's not found in a highway commercial zone that's usually meant to accommodate higher traffic or uses that serve the traveling community. So the commenter has more so raised concerns about if the car wash would accommodate tractor trailer traffic as opposed to vehicular traffic. So it's proposed to accommodate cars, not tractor trailers. And we did provide copies of what was already permitted, and they are well aware that they can follow up with additional questions or provide additional information if required. And we did receive, one of them requested to receive a notice of the decision. So as I mentioned, the application has been circulated to the Ministry of Transportation. The ministry has informed that permits are required to development, but have no objections to the proposed amendment. The application was also circulated to the Raisin Region Conservation Authority. They have no comments or no features regulated on the site presently. However, they will be involved in the site plan control process if this is approved. And the reason that they're involved is because they will be looking at any stormwater management designs, drainage that could impact their watershed. And at this point, we've not received any comments from the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry. However, we did have a pre-consultation meeting, and they're aware of the application and provided comments to the developer. So this zoning amendment application will be subject to a decision of council in the future, and we will be bringing a staff report with a recommendation to council, hopefully at our next meeting, or if not, the following meeting. Mr. Mayor, we do have a representative of the applicant here this evening, Mr. Vandrish. And so if you have any questions, I'm sure he'd be happy to answer any questions in regards to the development, particularly as I'll speak to the process. Thank you.
All right, are there any questions from committee members at present? Councillor Jaworski, and if you do have the answer, just there's a gray button here. You can step up to the podium and then talk into the microphone, please. Councillor Jaworski.
Thank you, through Mayor McDonald. Ms. Haley, and I'm sorry if I missed this, if you said that typically for a property this size would require how many parking spaces?
So that's an excellent question, Councillor Jaworski, and I didn't say that, and I didn't say it on purpose. As part of the application form, there is a question that shows what the required parking is and what the proposed parking is. However, that information was not provided to us, nor was it provided in terms of the reduction of the square footage for us to be able to calculate. So I couldn't answer that question honestly. However, what we looked at, and we looked at this with other staff as well, being the county staff, there's really no other additional parking that can be provided because they can't do another row of parking in the front. It would be difficult. It would block access for them coming in and out. So we chose then to word the zoning amendment to seek permission to have only 3 parking spaces to accommodate the both uses. Generally, car washes don't really require parking. It's more of a drive-through in and out. It's not people really hanging around. And so the laundromat then would primarily be served by the 3 spaces that are proposed. Again, those other spaces listed here, people would be permitted to park in or park along that curb facing west. We just can't count that because they don't own the land. So I apologize for not having that, detailed calculation, but.
Could I? And are they going to require like an encroachment agreement or something with the counties for those other parking spaces? Like when you say the county is well aware, there's no problem.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, that is something I wouldn't be able to speak to on behalf of the county. However, that is something that will come up during site plan control if it's approved. And they'll determine then if they will require an encroachment agreement or if they'll choose to regulate those spaces.
Are there any questions and comments from the members of the public here today? All right. Oh, yes, please do.
Maybe just like a note for the future. Did you say our bylaw requires 10 cars in the car wash lineup? Because, again, I'm no expert in that, but that seems excessive. So I don't know if that's ever something for a housekeeping amendment, maybe something to reduce, because it sounds excessive.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's common to have a drive-through policy that would reflect any type of drive-through. So it could be a Tim Hortons drive-through, a McDonald's drive-through. We don't have a different formula for different types of uses. I mean, you might see that more in City of Toronto, City of Ottawa bylaws where they're really concerned about spaces and stacking. But yeah, so our section of our bylaw is very generic in terms of speaking to any drive-through facilities which could accommodate a Tim Hortons, and having a minimum of 10 for a Tim Hortons is not a bad idea. You wouldn't want the overflow of traffic onto a public road, so I get that it's probably excessive for a car wash, but I mean, that's something we can certainly look at, but the chances of South Glengarry having multiple facilities that are non-food serving that for drive-throughs would be pretty slim, but thank you.
If I may, just based on some conversations we've had at home before, Tim Hortons is obviously, like, if there was one exception to the rule, can we make like a Tim Hortons exception? Because I understand, like, in Alexandria on County Road 34, there's, if not hundreds, near 1,000 more just there compared to going out of the village. Is that something that would ever be considered, or is 10 enough for Tim Hortons too? Because there's always, or not always, but like that's the space that's going to have queuing problems.
Mr. Mayor, we can write anything we want to write in our bylaw within provincial policy, and that would fall within the rules, so yes.
Thank you. So with no other questions or comments from the public or committee, we'll move on to zoning bylaw 03-2024, 28 South Terrace. Mrs. Haley.
Perfect, thank you. So our next application pertains to Lot 6, Plan 26, being Part 2 of Reference Plan 14R 6759, located in the geographic village of Lancaster, now in South Glengarry, and is located or addressed at 28 South Terrace Street. And this application is known as the Lancaster Masonic Lodge. This is the subject area of the property that's proposed to be rezoned. So the purpose of this amendment is to rezone a portion of the subject property from residential 2 to residential 2 exception 4 to permit the following. To permit a private club as a use on the subject property, increase the maximum amount of front yard that can be used as or constructed as a driveway or parking space from 50% to 100%. So typically you only want 50% of your front yard to be used for parking. Reduce the 1.5 meter setback along a lot line, being a street or road, to all parking spaces to 0 meters. So basically what that means is at the front of commercial properties, you typically want a 1.5 meter setback before your parking spaces start. And then reduce the required number of parking spaces for the proposed private club from 17 spaces to 4 spaces. So just to clarify this, again, we have a generic formula in the bylaw that would pertain to all private clubs. Those private clubs could be, massive clubs or small clubs. We don't have different formulas for different types of clubs. So that's why you'll see a much larger number than might be needed for some clubs. If this amendment is approved, all other applicable provisions of our zoning bylaw 3809 as amended shall continue to apply. We're now going to speak to the subject property and the activity that's been happening on this site to date. So there's been 2 severance applications that were provisionally approved by the United Counties to sever the property into 3 separate sections or 3 separate lots. The proposed amendment will only affect the severed portion of the property, referred to as application B9523, and will permit new uses and alter parking standards as I previously described. So B9523 on this screen is the long pink rectangular portion that's at the bottom, so that's on the south side. The Lancaster Lodge is currently located on this property, which is addressed at 28 South Terrace. It also has 2 residential units, I believe, within the structure. And this lodge currently provides no parking spaces to its members, as the parking spaces that are available on site would accommodate the existing tenants. And the property is serviced by municipal water and sewer, and any new construction will also have services by municipal water and sewer. The subject property is currently designated residential district in the county official plan, and a staff report summarizing consistency with the official plan and a PPS will be brought to council in the near future. So we're now going to show you some images. Again, this is a survey of the subject property just to demonstrate the property's been surveyed. I wish I had a pointer. We might have to invest in one of those. The northern portion of the survey shows the 3 separated lots, which is basically the image that I had showed a couple slides ago. We now have some photos of the property. So this would be the backyard of 28 Terrace Street, which happens to be the severed portion of B95 23. And this would be the proposed location of the lodge if the amendment is approved. So I'll just go through the series of photos here. Again, this would be from the southwest corner of the subject property. And then this would be from the backyard. So this application was circulated to the Ministry of Transportation as well. It happens to fall within that 395 meter buffer area. We've not received any comments. We may not receive any comments because it's so close to the outside of that circulation area. And we've not received any verbal comments from the public to date. However, we did receive one written comment. It came in right before the end of the day today, or shortly after 4 o'clock. And this is from an abutting property owner located at 2 Maple Street, I believe, where they've received notice of the request to rezone the property. I'll just summarize this. So they're expressing concerns about the lodge currently having meetings and only has space for 3 cars in their driveway, which means they often park up and down Maple Street, including on lawns and blocking our driveway, in our neighbor's driveway being the vet, and all up and down South Terrace. They often have no regard for street signs and will block the corners and run the stop signs and park opposite directions to the roads and blocking the CN Via Rail access driveway. We have young children, and this is already an issue. We are opposed to this amendment as it would only create more issues. And then if we had any questions, to reach out to them. So I did follow up within this earlier this evening, just saying thank you for your comments, and they will be provided a copy of the decision. So the zoning amendment will be subject to a decision of council, and we will be bringing a staff report, including a recommendation to council for a decision in the near future, possibly the next meeting. So at this time, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Surduk and Mr. Fournier are here representing the Masonic Lodge, and they may have additional information or be able to answer questions that I cannot answer. Thank you.
Okay. If you just, if you do have anything, it's the gray button, and then just speak into it. Is there anything you'd like to add, comments, or questions?
Okay, thank you. Just before I make my comments, Mr. Chairman, I would indicate, because I think the obvious question is how big is a required parking space? It's 8 feet by 20 feet. So effectively a 17 space parking lot would eliminate any possibility for a building on the property. And I believe, though, there has been a report by the manager of infrastructure, and she had no objection to the front yard becoming 50 to 100%. Fine. And then finally, if I may continue, I'd like to make 4 comments. Again, I received this objection at 4:32 this afternoon, and we've been playing with this project for about a year. We've thought we dealt with all parties in the area. The nature of the club, it's a private club, a fraternal organization. If people aren't aware of that, we're supposed to promote fellowship, goodwill, public welfare. So I was surprised with the comments as to the suggestion that the members parked in a fashion that was contrary to the law. Having said that, if that was the case, it should have been addressed. I want to indicate that the nature of the lodge is it has 1 meeting a month. Okay, that meeting is at night, 7:30 to 9:30. So primarily the meetings are after dark because we only meet during the winter and there's no summer meetings. We're hoping to solicit Martintown Lodge attending also to divide the rent. The meetings are attended by, right now, 10 to 15 members. They attend not in individual cars. They carpool. Some people like me walk there. Again, it is after dark. I myself have not had any objections to my knowledge of the nature of this parking. At the time that I received this email, Mr. Charles Sangster, by coincidence, was in the office. As most of you are aware, he's a former reeve of the Township of Lancaster and mayor of Township of South Glengarry. He has been a Masonic member for 44 years, and he indicated he was not aware of any complaints. And I'm just wondering if I may ask Madam General Manager and Planner, is there any record of any complaints that you're aware of?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we have no record of any complaints for parking, nor do we prohibit parking on the streets in that location.
That's fine. And finally, the last comment that I would make is there's a reference there to the fact that members of the lodge also blocked the vet's property, and I had an opportunity to get a hold of him, although he's on holidays, just before 5, and he provided 2 points to me. Firstly, he had no complaints about the Masons or their visitors parking on or blocking his driveway. And the other interesting thing, which I wasn't aware of, because I guess I'm a newer member, but he indicated I gave permission to the Masons to park in my parking lot, which seems to go against the complaint. And although he did make a caveat saying that I would hope that nobody would park and block my door in case of emergencies, but he said that never happened. So basically, we got a small club. The people involved in this project, which is a downsizing, we want to keep the organization alive. The building has been sold in the one lot to an electrical contractor who I believe will be making an application from Apple Hill. Our purpose and tenants, again, are for fellowship and goodwill, and as Mr. Lang pointed out tonight, which was a very good point, he indicated, well, there's no carousing around. Well, no, okay, the lodge is a non-drinking facility. You don't drink on the premises. Having said that, this project has been basically spearheaded by a group, and they've devoted their time and put in their money, their time and effort without any compensation, including myself, and it's a worthwhile project, I think, and that's why I've come to bear with it. Do you have anything to say, Mr. Forney?
Well, I think you pretty well said it all, unless there's any questions. But
Are there any questions or comments from around the table? Councillor Jaworski.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. So no, I mean, it sounds like this is overall part of like a bigger project, right? That is doing a lot of good things in terms of improving density in Lancaster. And I think requiring a project like this or a building like this to require 17 parking spaces, I mean, that's really about making this village for cars as opposed to people. So I think a reduction in parking, that makes, I mean, it makes a lot of sense. And that street there, I mean, again, I think parking on a street is a perfectly fine thing, a fine use if you're on the side of the road. I mean, unless Ms. Haley, you're saying there's something wrong with that, I mean, or how this would contravene some regulations that we have. I mean, again, we build all that infrastructure for cars, so I think it makes sense for them to be able to park on the street. So, I mean, I don't think there's anything, and it sounds very much like the applicant, they're trying to work well with their neighbors. Sometimes you try very hard and it doesn't end up being perfect. You might not get everyone inside, but it sounds, the most important thing is that you're trying to work well with all your neighbors, and it sounds like that's what's happening, so, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Any further questions or comments? All right, then we'll move to call this to adjournment, excuse me. Can I get a mover and a seconder for chairman? Moved by Councillor McDonnell, seconded by Councillor Bougie, that we adjourn to the call of the chair at 6:58 p.m. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you very much.